Exactly.
Where you work for the book that you were hoping to read?
No, it was finishing down in the book.
Okay.
Which I think today
I
might
finished it. I haven't read any of the books of the other authors. I think I'm going to start with Hernandez. You're going to try.
In fact,
You read it?
yes.
Right.
In fact, right after I did that, I never found his previous
Yeah.
book.
Oh, good.
That's
Okay,
how
so
good I
okay,
thought
I'm
Trust
excited.
was.
Yeah, he's made sure.
Well, folks, let's get started. We'll let you all know that the bookstore closes at 8 p.m. So we will be shutting down register right at 8 o'clock. We'll give you guys some time, about 10 minutes prior, if there's anything else you remember that you need, especially if you haven't got a copy of this wonderful book by Courtney Maum. And then we can hang out here. We'll exit out Bailey Avenue. We really appreciate everybody's support throughout, especially the last couple of years. Welcome to our beautiful event space. Served as our warehousing area for sending out deliveries throughout Louisville, and because y'all have been here for us, we've been able to still be here for you, so we appreciate it. Thank you for supporting independent bookstores. Without the independent people who support us, we cannot have author events. There are no you can't meet an author in a book-selling, internet-based warehouse. So thank you for shopping with us. We really appreciate it. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our two guests here today. I'm very excited to have both of these folks here. Erin Chandler is a celebrated actress and the author of the memoir Junebug versus Hurricane and the essay collection Cinderella Sweeping Up. She teaches playwriting and screenwriting at the Carnegie Center and has a weekly column in the Woodford Sun. And, of course, the author of The Year of the Horses. Courtney Maum is the author of the novels. Also, sorry, there's my focusing. Thank you, Costa
Sorry. I could go back. I think I'd rename that one.
Not 2020 anymore. Touch, and I am having so much fun here without you, and a guide for writers before and after the book deal. Her writing and essays have been widely published in such outlets as the New York Times, O, the Oprah Magazine, Interview Magazine, and Modern Law. She lives in Litchfield County, Connecticut, where she founded the Learning Collaborative, the Cabins. Without further ado, everyone, Carmichael's Bookstore is proud to present Courtney Maum.
A giant round of applause to you all. I can tell you, I mean, you heard my bio. I don't live in Kentucky, and so when your publisher sends you to places that you don't live, you always wonder, well, who the hell is going to be in the chairs? And the answer is sometimes no one. I'll tell you a quick story because I feel like we're with friends and family. So that only happened to me once where there was actually, well, that's not true, there was one person. There was one person when I was touring for my second book, and I recognized him from college, and he was someone in college we called Hard Drugs Matt. And that morning I had been in San Francisco for an event and had me take a puddle jumper out to, I think I went up to LA that very day, and it was a lot. I was on an airplane every day, and so having just one person at this thing that I'd flown to felt not so good. And so I saw him and I thought, and it was a matinee event, and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna get day drunk with hard drugs. What else is there to do? We'll go to the pub across the street. I saw my whole bit, because I had a driver, I was with a bigger press, and I thought, oh my God, I was going to go look for a pitcher of beer, and so I said, Matt, would you be my guest? I'm not going to do an event just for you. Would you accompany me across the street? Yes, of course, let's catch up. So we go across the street, and we sit down, I'm like, a pitcher? You know, should we go for a pitcher? He goes, oh no, I've been sober 11 years. I'm like, oh my God! Oh no! But I just want to say a very special thank you to my new friends from Booktopia. I just came to Kentucky from Vermont, and my book's only a week out, and met the most wonderful people, mostly women, but some men who were less wonderful, but you know. In Vermont, And then we're coming up the stairs here, and in my mind, I'm like, these women look so familiar, but you know, and then here they are. I mean, it's just amazing, and it makes me feel so warm and fuzzy. So thank you, Booktopians and new friends. And yeah, I'll stop this shtick now.
Oh, it's exciting. I am so excited for you all to be here, and I'm excited to be here at Carmichael's, and for you all to celebrate this book that's been out for 1 week.
Yeah, 1 week.
So I just want to, this is Courtney's 5th book, but it's only her first memoir.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you.
And it'll be my last.
I wanted to ask you what prompted you to write a memoir, and what the biggest difference is as a writer.
Yeah. Well, the biggest difference is when the damn book comes out, and you're we'll get there. So, unfortunately, I have a writing process that I tried to deny for a long time, and now I realize I just have to sort of own it and learn to love it. And that process is I write an entire book-length project, so 70, 80, 90,000 words. I write the entire thing. And once that's written, I realize whatever form the thing should be. And sometimes I write something that long and I realize it just needs to be a personal essay. Or I write something that long and I realize, you know what, there's a character that appears on page 37 for one sentence, and actually the book needs to be, you know, narrated from that person's point of view. Or I write the whole book and think, oh, that was just an itch I needed to scratch. And I'm not exaggerating, unfortunately. So this started off as a novel. I did not want to write a memoir. I have one of those families where we do not communicate about anything aside from the weather, dinner, and maybe, you know, whether HGTV, like should they buy or sell the house, right? That's it. We don't talk about serious things. So I did not finish the whole draft as a memoir, but I got far enough to think, you know what, this is a personal essay. It's just a short personal essay. And I wrote the essay, it was in the New York Times way back in 2017. And that essay was about learning polo, the equestrian sport of polo, as an almost 40-year-old, not athletic person and a very fearful person. And I just thought, oh, I'm doing kind of cool, crazy thing, learning polo, I'll write about it. And it was actually the correspondence from readers to that piece. A lot of women writing me and saying, oh my gosh, I've never even seen a horse, but this made me want to go back to ballet. I loved ballet when I was little. Or it made me I've always wanted to try synchronized swimming. You know, why not now? Or I loved roller skating. I'm going to buy a roller skate. And all these people writing me and saying, you really inspired me to go back to a childhood passion. Because for me, horses were the obsession of my life as a little girl, and things happened in my life that you'll maybe read about in the book that kind of pushed the horses out. So, you know, with those lovely emails, that wasn't enough to break my fear of writing a memoir. It took, oh God, how did I even get the courage to how the hell did I start writing this book? I don't know. This started.
Can you give me like a little synopsis of what the book is about?
Oh yeah. So if you haven't somehow miraculously read it yet, this is the Year of the Horses. I cheated a little bit. It's the year and a half of the horses. You'll agree that the Year of the Horses sounds better. When I'm about 38 years old and everything's just falling apart in my life, and up until then I had a very controlled, looked amazing in the storefront type life, you know, overachiever, I had a lovely education, handsome husband, healthy daughter, like the whole thing. But inside I was completely coming undone, and it was starting to manifest in my work life, in my writing life, where it had never, no problems had ever come into that sphere. It was literally like it was a poison seeping through the different realms of my life. And I missed a book deadline for my second book, which to me, you know, a Virgo was like, actually made me come apart. And I tried, I've always had a chronic insomnia, But usually it flares up for like 4 or 5 days. But this period of my life, I was about 2.5 months into just not sleeping. I would maybe get 45 minutes here or there, but I was not sleeping, and the way that that manifested in my body, I lost tons of weight. I looked like a ghoul from hell. And tried medication, talk therapy, yoga, all the things. And even sleep medication wasn't working. I was just hell-bent on destroying myself, or I'm still not sure exactly what the hell was going on. I mean, I had hormonal imbalances, but I had a last-ditch effort where I scheduled a riding lesson, which I had not seen a horse in 30 years. I hadn't touched one, I hadn't smelled one, and that is what brought me back to this lost part of myself. And the horses, I had lost the magic in my own right. I mean, writing had always been my safe house. I mean, it is my great passion in life. It's where I get all my happiness. And I lost that because I was cracking under the pressure. My first book was like a big success, and they had high hopes for the second book, and I was unable to get it right. And the horses gave me back like an access code, really, to magic and joy and imagination again, and power and femininity and sensuality and lots of other things you'll discover in the book. So I wrote the memoir and worked with the same editor that I've worked with in the past, and she held my hand and made it better and gave me the courage to excavate even more and bring more of my family in, because
She weaves in her, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. I love this book, but it's, she weaves in her family life, and with this French filmmaker husband and this beautiful daughter and this, and this wonderful, growing up in Connecticut, with a deep depression. Even when she's, in the south of France with, a group of people, it's like, it's just so memorable, and it brought me back to many times that I felt the exact same way. But she finds it through the horses, and I want to ask you, and I want to tell you all how gorgeous it is, because it's almost like a history lesson. I mean, about when you think about horses, from beginning to end, and we've heard about it with how horses heal, and I wanted to ask you, when you chose the horses to bring you out of this darkness, how is it that the horses can see you?
Well, I love this question because I do. I mean, it's not that I want to get everyone on horseback, because unfortunately it's still a sport or an endeavor that's classist. In some states, I think less, maybe in Kentucky, but where I am, it is needs some expensive. You need some major bucks to get near a horse. But I'm just so passionate now about reminding people that the healing power of animals, like, that counts. If your dog is bringing you through the pandemic, and your rabbit is the reason that you wake up in the morning, like, that's okay. This is not something that you need to be ashamed of. I think it's worth celebrating, and because animals are, they're a true gift. Humans are not great right now. I don't think that we can say that we're doing a really
Can you
good
tell
job.
them what you explained last time, which was so
Yeah,
perfect
yeah.
about the...
Yeah, exactly. So the thing for me about horses, I'm in Kentucky, so is there anyone here who knows nothing about horses? Okay, so very good.
I didn't. No.
So for me, and the place that I was coming from, I certainly knew what it felt like to have anxiety. I certainly knew that I was not in my best mental state. I knew all these things. And I tried all the kind of white lady things, right? The meditation apps and the yoga, long walks, healthy eating, no alcohol, less alcohol, all these things. And nothing got me out of my head, because something I've come to realize in looking back at this whole experience is that I actually make a living being in my head, overanalyzing things, dwelling on conversations that happened 10 years ago, thinking too much, which is fine if you're writing a novel, but if you're trying to get out of a deep depression, that sort of lingering is very harmful. It doesn't help at all. And something I started to notice when I was really suffering, but still inside of a body that I guess presented enough as, okay, I have it together. It presented enough that I had it together that my friends didn't interject, or no one really tried to check in on me. Something I started to realize was that I was either fooling people, or my friends and family were lying to me and maybe didn't care enough to kind of intercept, right? But the horses don't lie. They can't lie. They don't do irony, and they don't do sarcasm, and they don't do lying. So when I started to come back into the barns, I would literally walk up this barn aisle. It's not like I had a horse, right? So I was using a lesson horse, so I'd pass other horses in the barn aisle, and they'd pin their ears when I walked by, or they'd start weaving or cribbing, and I thought, oh my God, well, my family might be lying to me, but these horses are not lying to me. I am bringing terrible energy out into the world. And whereas, if my husband, who did say to me at some point, he forced me into talk therapy, so he was aware that things weren't right, but even when he said you need to go to talk therapy, I was so angry because a lot of my unraveling kind of had to do with him and in ways that he was failing me, So even his outreaches of help felt accusatory because it's just so messy. But with the horses, it wasn't messy. This beautiful creature, you just want them to like you and have their ears forward. That's sort of all that I wanted. So I started really, really starting to pay attention for the first time because it mattered to me on my breath, on my body, to not have my shoulders up here and not be like this and frantic and not hold my breath and be very heavy in my body, even doing groundwork. And then on the horse, this is still a challenge for me because I'm a nervous rider, but maybe sing instead of hold my breath. And so little by little, instead of me getting on the horse and having it bolt right away because of all the tension and anxiety I had, which always happened to me all the time. I always had the runners because I was clenching them with panic. And instead of walking down the aisle and having the horses freak out, like today I went to the Kentucky Museum of the Horse, and and also Keeneland. I did all horse things, and it's amazing. You get to see the horses up close, and I was like, gosh, look how far I've come. No one's pinning their ears. Very like good energy. But that was something I honestly don't think I could have learned anywhere else. I needed an animal to teach me that, and I think I did need I needed a horse, and also because we do have a relationship with horses where they will allow us to ride them. I don't think for me that it could have been a dog, So yeah, horses gave me that gift that I now have really learned to carry within me. And I was telling Erin last night, I'll even picture my own daughter having a very feisty 8-year-old. She's like a thoroughbred of a child. And I'll picture her when we're having kind of a heated moment with her ears. And I'll picture the horse ears on my own daughter, and I'll think, is it me or is it her? Am I the one with my ears pinned back? Who's bringing the bad energy, and who can help out? And my husband, I'll do the same thing. And
I love that.
I started doing this stuff with my own family. I'll be like, you're here, let's get in your and it's weirdly helpful. Though.
Yes, no, I'm going to start taking myself, honestly. So what do you think that it is, or have you discovered what it is about the horses that brings out our true selves?
Oh my God, I have so many opinions, but I'm glad you asked me that because that's going to give me a nice opportunity to read a poem, which is my way of not answering this question. I think it's almost unanswerable, but I love this poem. And this is a little bit more specifically about the relationship, I think, between women and horses, but I just think it's so gorgeous.
Is this the poem?
I think it is.
Okay.
Well, you'll tell me. You'll tell me. So it's called How to Triumph Like a Girl by Ada Limon. I like the lady horses best. How they make it all look easy. Like running 40 miles per hour is as fun as taking a nap or grass. I like their lady horse swagger after winning. Ears up, girls, ears up. But mainly, let's be honest, I like that they're ladies. As if this big, dangerous animal is also a part of me. That somewhere inside the delicate skin of my body, there pumps an 8-pound female horse heart, giant with power, heavy with blood. Don't you want to believe it? Don't you want to lift my shirt and see the huge, beating, genius machine that thinks, no, it knows, it's gonna come in first. I love that poem so much. So I will try to answer your question a little bit though. Horses, they are mirrors to us, even just psychosomatically. After that, I mean, obviously I can only speak for myself, but I will say at this particular time in our human lives, with everything that we've been through, just us, not counting our ancestors and everything, but us, to see a horse, I think, is to be reminded of the simplicity of life and how it can be simpler, right? I don't mean to be naive because we need to earn the money. There's certain things we need to do that are unfortunately quite complicated in America. But I know that when I go and see horses, or just drive around like here in Kentucky and I get to see them, I think shelter, food, comfort. Shelter, food, comfort. These basic things are still in reach to us. Like the other day, I was in a very rural Florida recently. I have a girlfriend who has a polo operation there, breeding a bunch of horses in Live Oak, Florida. Has anyone been to Live Oak, Florida? It's a very rural area. Natural springs. It's not on the coast. I fell completely in love with it. But it is really in the middle of nowhere. My husband kept saying to me, he's Parisian, right? He kept saying like, well, what the hell what do people do? And I said, what do you mean? They do something during the day. For me, I'd be writing a novel. And then hopefully they get to spend time with people they love. And then they go to bed, and they just look at the river. Like, isn't that incredible? That's all you need, a house just, there were small houses, and I grew up in, you will meet my Greenwich, Connecticut of the 80s in this book. Not, I personally lived in a castle, and this is maybe a little simplistic, but I see a horse and I think, oh my God, the celebration of one's own physicality, just inhabiting your own physical body and then having those physical needs answered, it's a powerful reminder to maybe think, maybe a little bit more short term, and it really makes me feel grateful. And I have this bracelet, this is a little bit on topic, that I got
I noticed
at
that. I
the
love that
equestrian
bracelet.
fair, if I remember the equestrian fair. And it's supposed to look like a barn, the name of a show horse on a barn door, and it just says ride on. And I got it right before my tour because I thought, well, this is my 5th book, and I've had some books that were bestsellers, and then some books that didn't take off, and sometimes I get in my head about sales, and I know that that's not what matters. I know that what matters is meeting your readers and making what could be lifelong relationships with the booksellers, and just telling the best story you can and hoping that it finds the right. I know in my heart that that's what matters. Lots of things will come in to try to remind me to make me think that doesn't matter. So I got this bracelet that says ride on, so that I can just remember and picture my rescue horse. I have a rescue horse, and just remember, like, oh my God, whatever happens with your darn book, like, you've got a house, you've got family, food, like, you've got the grass, you're the horse with plenty of grass and a nice run-in, and like, life is beautiful.
That kind of leads into my question now, which is, before she was so enlightened, and she was bouncing off the walls, I particularly wanted to remember this. When she was discovering the horses, then she, as you'll learn in the book, not only discovered horses for the first time, but she decided to become a polo player. So when she's researching about this, that, and the other, I just love this line. She says, I wanted with no specific goal in sight. Most active riders are working to perfect a specific discipline. this specificity was missing from my life. And she goes on to talk about what people want this, that, and the other. So I love that. I was wanting with no goal. So can you tell me what that was?
Well, that to me was revolutionary, like, because I'm such a type A person. I'm the year of the horse, that's my sign, and I'm very goal oriented, you know. So for me, it was always.
I love that you were the year of the horse. When I got
I
to that
know.
part, I was like, she's the year of the
Oh,
horse.
I was
That's
so
what's called the year of
excited
the
when I
horses.
found that out, yeah. But to be quite frank, like from an early age of probably 8, I just never really did anything I wasn't great at. Like I went to a pretty fancy school where we were 100% encouraged, you know, if you have a talent, woo, let's hurry up and like do after school activities so we can get you into a good school where you will be further celebrated for this thing that you're already good at. And it had been so long since I tried something that I probably wasn't going to be good at, and polo, I have a really good swing. I'm like, I have some secret weapons, but I'm very scared of speed, which unfortunately is polo is not. Should let me read an excerpt.
Read that excerpt.
If I can find it, I have, I think, a funny section of the first time I.
It's such an interesting thing when you have found it?
Well, I mean, I have it.
She's talking about like when we go through these depression fits or we go through these midlife crises, 1 or 2 every decade, it seems to come to me. But it's doing something completely out of the ordinary, and I think it's like universal, we all will choose something, and I was thinking, what did I do? And I remember at some point, like about 5 or 10 years ago, I was like, I'm gonna be a folk singer. I'm gonna like suddenly, because I play guitar a little bit. And I'm like, everybody does that in Kentucky, I just moved back, and so it's like her being both. It's just so funny that we need to get out of doing everything perfect, like she explains, and then with her, it's getting it back into your body and shake things up. You found it?
Yeah, I did find it. It's labeled midlife crisis.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So I'm not going to read the whole. There's a section that comes right before what I'm going to read, which I had 2 private polo lessons up to this point, which meant that I'd been alone in an enclosed area with the ball and the horse and the mallet and the whole thing, and was feeling myself, you know. And then the woman who'd given me this private lesson said, okay, well, I think you're ready for the arena, you know, join the team. And so I thought, I don't know, that we'd all be like at a stand, like a walk or something. And these were all teenagers who'd been playing at a very elevated
and I love the way you describe how cool they are and swift and oh, that was
the best
great.
player on the team is this 12-year-old badass. So I'm thrown into this team. I mean, I'll just read a little excerpt, but it's mostly what comes after I wanted to read. So I'm on a horse that I'd had lessons on, who was a total angel. But then Allison, she's my coach, blew the whistle. Oh, this is arena polo, by the way, the only polo I could afford. It's not on the grass. It's in an enclosed area. It's faster and much more physical, and you use a little bit larger ball. Think ice hockey, but on horseback. And there we go. And then Allison blew the whistle, and I felt it. The very rearrangement of the cells in Estrella's bloodstream. The mare was ready to play. Oh my God, I thought, she's gonna gallop after the ball, and I barely even cantered. My own body was run through with a numbing swell of buyer's remorse. What in the hell was I doing there? Whee! I was so stunned by the game's beginning, it took me several moments to realize that a whistle had been blown. Courtney for obstruction. Jared's team gets a knock-in from the point of the foul. I blinked into the space where the whistle's noise had been. What foul? Obstructing what? Estrella pulled and strained against me, eager to move her little body as I tried to piece everything together. You can't stand still in polo, Allison shouted. You'll block the train. It's dangerous. You have to move. Jared slammed the ball in the direction of his goal. Dear God, it almost hit us. I jerked Estrella out of the way, and she pulled her head the opposite direction in protest of my roughness with her mouth. For no reason that I could see, everyone was cantering to the opposite goal. We changed direction after every goal, Allison called back from the stampede. What in the hell am I doing here? What in the hell am I doing here? Went my rabbit heart. Although I take emotional risks as a writer, I am not a physical risk taker. I bring my daughter sledding in the winter, but beg off from the actual sledding part, because even modest hills give me the butterflies. We have a log stretching over a small stream in our backyard that runs between our property and a friend's house. And although Nina runs back and forth across that thing in a princess dress and light-up slippers, it's all I can do not to get down on my bottom and scuttle across it when it's wet. When we are children, especially if we have supportive and energetic caretakers, we are encouraged to try things until we find what sticks. But as we enter adulthood, many of us, myself included, cling safely to what works. When we find a career that seems right for us, we work to rise up in that career. When we form our circle of friends, we deepen the relationships within that specific circle. And for those of us who are monogamous, we do what it takes to turn one of the many people in our universe into the everlasting one. What is a midlife crisis other than a widening of these circles, a breaking of such patterns, a rising up against the order we had established, a sudden yearning to be great, or at least knowledgeable, in something that we haven't been doing very much of? She dropped her legal practice to become an herbalist. He divorced his wife for a woman 20 years his senior. She finally came out. We've all heard the stories of the people who up and left the life that they were good at for something that came out of nowhere, a passion speeding across their psyche like a blazing comet. I'll just read one more paragraph. But these rebellions don't come out of nowhere. When we bang our fists against the bars of middle age, it's usually because there's a voice within us that is sick to death of going unused. I was wrong about my mother's motorcycle. It hadn't been something that she picked up after a divorce she hadn't wanted. I called my mom to ask her about it, to match up what I remembered with what I was writing. And she said that she'd been a motorcycle enthusiast in her youth. She had a boyfriend, one of her last loves before she married my father, who used to take her everywhere on his Harley Davidson. The boyfriend had given her lessons, but she'd never had the courage to try motorcycling herself until the divorce opened up a door for her that she could now go through. The Sportster that I remembered coming out of nowhere didn't come out of nowhere. And this is true, stays true, even if the Sportster didn't stay. Wow. I'm just gonna hold it. I'm gonna hold it. I'm crouching more.
Yeah, that was such an amazing,
There we go.
now, you're really hard on yourself in your
Yes.
memoir. I mean, I'm wondering if the self-revelation, that the learning, you've been equally hard about, becoming, what is the word? Not realized, I'm not trying to think of, enlightened is basically what I'm saying. Becoming enlightened, because you've been tough on yourself your whole life, and it explains it in the memoir. She was kind of the heavyweight in the family even when you were a little kid.
Yeah. Well, the self-revelation, so it's funny you mentioned that. So my, right before you have a book come out, it's what we call pre-publication. And this fall, I kept thinking, how come I'm not getting like a legal fact check? And I called up my editor and I said, how come I'm not getting a legal fact check? Because so many of my memoirist friends were complaining about their legal fact check. And she said, oh, well, we only do that when defamation of character is a possibility, and the only defamation of character in this book is against yourself. So unless you're going to sue yourself. And so the thing with this book is that it opens with me meeting a therapist who I'm making fun of because I didn't want to go to therapy, and then sure enough I walk in and I've been assigned a 23-year-old therapist with a Live Strong bracelet, like a real bro, right? Now it turns out, this is maybe a spoiler, but he ended up being just an absolutely incredible therapist. And he encouraged me to think of my life in terms of firefighters. And I loved him right away after we had the first session because he used a whiteboard. And I'm just so type A that, you bring out a whiteboard and you start writing my negative characteristics, and I'm like all about it. And so he put out these different sectors of my life, and he said, where were your firefighters when you were little for these different domains? And there's a scene in the book where I get all choked up, and I'm like, it was me, I was always alone, and it's me. And then by the end of the book, I realized, no, you dum-dum, you just sort of maybe had this thought that like writers actually did have to be tortured and lonely and sad, when in fact, maybe they weren't the best communicators, but you did have firefighters all around you, your whole life. You just didn't know how to ask for help. And so one of the messages in this book, I think, is definitely for people to not only learn how to ask for help, but also be a little bit gentler if the help arrives in a format that's not exactly what they wanted, you know, because certainly my husband, since obviously we're talking a lot more about this dark period, you know, he had some real stumbles, right, where I'm like, oh, I remember one Christmas, like, he gave me an apron, and I'm like, this is exactly not what, you're not hitting the marks, buddy, like, maybe a holster or something, like, I don't want to. But you know, but then thanks to Joe, I kind of bitched about the Christmas present, and he's like, okay, but he's trying. You have all these expectations, and he's trying. I mean, he gave you a gift, you know. So we kind of have to meet in the middle, and that's something I'm trying to do with this book. I actually had a blurber. We had to tone down her blurb because it said something like, I can't believe how bad she makes herself look. It's so great. It's like so exciting. And it touched me, and then my editor said, we can't print that. So you'll see Holly Whitaker's blurb is toned down, but I love being honest. I mean, it's not that it comes easy, but to me, what other gift can I give people who don't know me in a book but my vulnerability and honesty? I mean, especially in a memoir, I see that as my duty. Maybe it's not every memoirist's duty, but you know, if you're gonna buy the book, like, I think you deserve to meet the truest version of me, you know.
And I wanna, we have to get to questions.
Oh,
and
okay.
Speaking of the truest version of you, I'm gonna stop talking after I read this amazing paragraph. I remember yearning for a horse with all the might I had within me when the anesthesiologist said this. Yearning for that power and that synchronicity with an animal who had also been misjudged and mistreated and handled like an ornament. I remember thinking, I'm gonna gallop over your fucking face, you moron. And then he knocked me out with something that he shot inside my arm, and I was wheeled into a cold room, and then I wasn't pregnant anymore.
Oh, so I'm so glad that we'll end on that note, because it's unfortunately so apropos to things that are happening today, but this is a big thing that I'm starting to, in the book you'll meet a lot of geldings, and there's a mare in my life now who is really stirring up my feminist side and making me see just a lot of similarities between the way that women are viewed in society and the way that mares are viewed in different disciplines, but especially in polo, unfortunately. I rescued a Kentucky-born racehorse this winter who was retrained for polo, and she's aged, you know, she's a real senior, she's 27, and just seeing what has been done to her body just to chase after a ball, you know, the things that these men who, and I've met them, have done to her. My horse was played all last summer at the Greenwich Polo Club, so that's high goal polo, on an abscess. Ended up blowing out her corona. She was drugged every single time this dude played polo on her. Oh wait, 4 minutes. Oh God.
So you all have to ask
I didn't hear the shaker thing. Oh my gosh, I'll stop talking. But actually, if you Google my name in the Guardian newspaper, they just did a beautiful like photo essay on this horse, so I'm very proud. So
Yes, I know.
I'm very proud.
Rescue racehorse is amazing.
Oh, I could talk to you all.
Do you all have any questions for Courtney?
You said this was a novel first. Like, how much of it did you write before you?
Yeah, I got to about 40,000 words, so that would be kind of half, I would say. And I usually, if I can get past 30,000 words, that's about when I know whether the book's gonna work or not. And the reason for that is because it means you're about to hit the middle. And generally, if you don't have a plot, the middle is shows up and says, we have nothing planned here. There's no food, there's no snacks, there's no water, we have no plot, all the characters have already reached the end of their arc. And that is what happened, and that's when I realized, I think maybe this is more a personal story. I'll do 1,200 words for the New York Times instead, and then, yeah, that's a good question though. So if there's writers here, it's the middle that will let you know if you have a book. If you don't have a middle, you probably don't have a book, but you might have a short story or a novella, so that's nice.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I haven't read any of your fiction. I'm sorry to say.
That's okay, there's
No,
time.
out to you before.
That's all right.
But I'll take care of it. What is in your fiction?
Yeah.
Did you write about horses?
No, yeah, that's a great question, actually. I love that you asked that. I do not. I don't. Okay, in my third book, there's a horse, but generally I don't. I write, I would say my books, like kind of on the outset, will seem different, but they all deal very much with a creative person. Usually the protagonist is a creative person, trying to hold on to the joy of creativity in a world or culture that wants to suck that magic out of them. So my first book featured written from the point of view of a British artist, but that book's more of a,
I'm listening to that on Audible now.
Yeah.
It's really good. And
Apparently
I'm trying to
Audible's
pick out the
good.
characters, like, is that her husband?
Right.
Is that her daughter? Is that her, you know?
that book was an interrogation into
Tell me the name
forgiveness.
of that.
I'm having so much fun here without you. It was an interrogation into forgiveness after infidelity. There's been tons of infidelity in my family tree. And I always thought, well, God, everyone like blew up their lives. How come nobody tried to forgive each other? So I couldn't find a book that showed people trying to work through a very, very serious infidelity, one that involved love. So I wrote it. And then the second book, Touch, is about how social media and tech is destroying our humanity. So that's timely if you want to go back to one of my backlist ones. And then Costa Alegre is very different. It's a very fictionalized historical account of the exodus of surrealist artists during World War II, written from the point of view of Peggy Guggenheim's daughter in a diary. And then my fourth book was Before and After Book Deal, which is a guide to this crazy act of publishing in America. Yeah, so a little bit.
Which I can't wait to get.
Yeah, it's funny. That book's great. I'm proud of that book, and I was told not to write it. So if there's any writers here,
And you interviewed a bunch of different
Yeah.
writers about their bookstores, and you know, from famous writers to other writers, and talking about which I'm
yeah, not just book tours. I asked them about it literally tackles every single question. So it's 2 books. The Before the Book Deal, how do I find an agent? How do I do all? And then After the Book Deal, and that's where I got all these stars, you know, like Roxane Gay and Tony Doerr, who wrote All the Light We Cannot See, to share embarrassing moments so that we understand that writers are, you know, very, very normal people.
It's gonna be really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't mean to stop you,
Yeah,
but it's 10. You all have 10 minutes to buy her book. We're hanging out a few minutes afterwards, so she's going to be here to sign your book. But if you all would like to get it, I really can't recommend it enough. I
Thank
just
you.
loved it. So, anyway, thank you all for coming. And
Erin has books for sale. Also, the one here tonight is the essay Cinderella Sweeping Up,
Yeah,
which that's a culmination of your column, right?
yes,
Yeah,
I wrote
so
a column
funny.
in Woodford Sun for me.
Whip smart, and she herself has a beautiful memoir called Junebug versus Hurricane, which is, we'll go out to a bar and talk for another hour, but she's also had quite a colorful family life and a brother that took up a lot of room, and a beautiful, beautiful writer. And you're so generous to have accompanied me, not just tonight, but Erin was in conversation with me yesterday in Lexington. If I'm allowed to say that y'all are much kinder here. I think we got a little stronger community of readers because last night. But Carmichael's, thank you very much. No, but thank you so much, Louis. There's a lot of people here. You don't know me from and it's just, it means a lot to a touring author. We truly don't know what the hell we're getting into. You know, when we go to a bookstore we've never been in, and this felt to me really lovely. So I'm so grateful, and thank you very much.